the meeting to order at 4:37. Can you please give a roll call?
Okay. Evans is absent. Matamore is absent. Heiser White. O'Toole.
Here.
Priscillic.
Here.
Schneider.
Here.
And Moody is absent. So that's 4 present, 3 absent.
And we have a quorum with 4 present.
Yep.
Okay. Can I get an approval of, let's see, call to order, roll call, approval of agenda and minutes? Do we have any changes to the agenda?
Nope, not today.
Okay. Can we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
In a second?
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. The agenda is set. The meeting minutes from 8/26. Can we, I hope everybody's had an opportunity to review them. Can we have a motion to approve those minutes and a second on that,
Motion
please?
to approve the August 26th minutes.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Thank you. Those minutes have been approved. Citizen comments for non-agenda related topics. These would be general in nature. Do we have any comments from citizens? Derek, you're going to have to kind of help me be my eyes and ears out there because I'm not sitting there. So
Yeah, we can help you there.
so if there are
We're seeing none.
Okay, and any online? I am not seeing any online. So with that, we will move on. Any disclosures from anyone here today? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Current planning projects. So old business, this is CUP 2308. 429 Bill Nye Avenue, the Laramie Lofts multifamily dwelling complex. And Ryan, did we table this previously? Or can I just turn it over to Joe? Do we need to bring it back or?
You did postpone it. I do not believe you have to bring it back with a motion since
Okay.
it was not tabled. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Joe, take it away, please.
Chair Commission, today we had planned on just postponing the multifamily complex today. However, with further communication with the applicant, it sounds like they would like to just withdraw the application fully at the moment until they can figure out their pro forma and make sure that everything pencils out for them. Throughout the process, the project has somewhat increased in scope and then exceeded the budget, and now they are trying to work it back to workable limits for their company. That is not to say that this item, they do plan on bringing something before you all and hopefully in the near future. However, we don't want to continue to postpone this indefinitely. Just so that you all know, because we are withdrawing this, notice will go out to property owners within 300 feet again over this. So there will be notification of people before it comes before you again.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Is that, we don't need a motion or anything since it's been withdrawn, we just move on to the next item? Is that
Chair, through you,
correct?
You will need to accept a withdrawal or make a motion to withdraw. And then since it did come before you and you postponed it. So just for proper procedures, you do need to make a motion in a second and then accept the withdrawal.
Okay. All right. Can we have a motion to withdraw the item 6AI, the CUP 2308?
So I make a motion to withdraw 6AI CUP 2308 Laramie Lofts multifamily dwelling complex. Is there a second?
And a second?
I second.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Ryan, can you give us a roll call vote on this, please?
Evans is absent. Matamore is absent. Isler White,
Aye.
O'Toole,
Aye.
Persilic,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye.
and Moody is absent. So that is 4 yeses, 0 nos, and 3 absent.
Okay, thank you. On to the next item of new business, 6B, 6BI, the CUP 2404, 2552 North 15th Street, the E-Free Church expansion multi-use area. Derek, are you giving us a rundown on this CUP for us?
Chair, Commission, yes, that would be B. So before you is a conditional use permit application for, it's 2552 North 15th Street. It's for expansion of a church, an existing church that's located at that location. This conditional use is required because in an R2 zoning district, churches are required to go through the conditional use process, typically just associated with impacts to a neighborhood, which the R2 zone is just a residential, mid-level residential neighborhood, allowing for multifamily uses there. Staff does recommend approval of the conditional use as proposed. I'm going to kind of run through just a few things. There's a little bit of history on this project, and then just kind of what's being proposed to provide some context to the request. So back in 2012, the conditional use process was gone through for this building and for construction of the church that's located there. The building was already existing, but then there was an addition at that time. And so at that time, we brought the site into conformance under the conditional use process. During that time in 2012, not only was the building expanded, but the parking area and all of that you pretty much see today was all formalized. You see landscaping was installed on kind of all the sides. There was fencing put in, the building expansion. There was a large kind of pull around to the backside, and really formalizing the site, like I said, as you see it today. The current application is a request to expand the building on the west side of the site or the west side of the building. And it's really there to accommodate the current congregation by adding fellowship, recreation, and classroom space. The expansion itself is kind of going to be located in that area. If you've looked at any of the aerial photos or the maps that were provided, kind of where the existing playground and kind of grass area due west of the building is located. You'll see there's some removal of some of the parking that's kind of located on that very western edge. However, generally the parking numbers meet all the requirements for a church of this size in this location. This is often a use that we've seen occur with churches where this ancillary space is developed that's beyond the congregation space. Typically, we've looked at this for not only this property, but other churches in the community, kind of just as additional space. Once again, like I said, it doesn't really expand the congregation. What we find with churches is, with their services are held on a Sunday, their highest peak traffic, their most impact and all of that really occurs on Sundays during those services and those times of worship whenever they have them. That's when all the people are there, and that these other spaces really are used kind of secondarily and never at the same time during the actual services. Like I mentioned, the zoning is all R2 kind of in this area. There is some O-zoned property that's part of some school district property, as well as just some open space property very up on Sierra Sky, kind of to the east. But aside from that, everything else is zoned R2 in this neighborhood. When we look at conditional use permits, we do look at the requirements just like we would for a new conditional use. Ingress and egress to the property, like I mentioned, is already existing primary access comes off of 15th Street, but during the 2012 process, they did provide access into the alleyway that's kind of below to the south of the property. To provide a little bit of background and history, because I was here when we worked on that project, there was a lot of conversation about paving of the alleyway. Seems like for whatever reason, this planning commission gets to hear a lot about paving alleyways. Who would have ever thought? But during that time, one of the requests by the neighborhood, who was fairly vocal at that time about the church being there, was keeping the alleyway just a gravel alleyway to discourage just heavy use of it. Only use really during the services and when people needed to come in and out of the parking lot. I provided some of the parking information and the numbers and the access numbers that were done with this project originally, as well as kind of under the current proposal. We believe that kind of keeping with that same line because of the public input that happened during that first 2012 project still makes sense, and really just encourages really that kind of local use still in that area. Also at that time, there was no requirements to pave alleyways, so it was a little bit different standard at the time. So off-street parking, as I noted, you'll see we provided some parking calculations within the staff report related to parking during that time. In 2012, they did request some of those parking spaces be counted towards the use, which is located on 15th Street. We felt that that was very acceptable and continue to do. Like I said, really this space is kind of in addition to the congregation space and the worship space that's happening during Sundays, which is your peak times for not only parking, but travel and traffic impacts. And so we felt that keeping some of that area the same and the way that they have it proposed in the plan was adequate for the request. Control of offsite noise and glare. And those types of issues really have not been an issue since the establishment of the conditional use in 2012 or really prior to that. So we feel like this expansion shouldn't create any other additional issues. Refuse and service areas are remaining the same. They're properly serviced on the site with a trash enclosure. There is a kind of chain link fencing enclosure, which doesn't fully meet our requirements, but it's been in place for a long time at the site since the original conditional use prior to us having some of the standards that we presently do. And we felt that that was appropriate to keep and remain as is. There's no major changes to utilities here. The expansion can be properly serviced by water and sewer and the other utilities that already exist on site. The building expansion doesn't affect any of the buffer yards or screening that's required on the site. All that's present currently meets the requirements of code today. And so just the building expansion is fairly simple in our minds in terms of the site. Signage is considered during a conditional use. No changes to the signage is being proposed on the site. And there was no photometric plan provided because there are no changes to the existing lighting that was approved in 2012. The use being appropriate to specific location, intensity, and bulk. The zoning district is R2. It allows for things like duplexes, townhomes, or fourplexes is kind of the highest type style building that's permitted. They do permit churches within this zoning district, but it is required to go through the conditional use process, like I mentioned. This building has been located there for quite some time now with minimal impact based on any contact with our office. We don't believe that this will affect the health, safety, or welfare of the neighborhood. This proposed development, is meeting all the required setbacks for this district, including the building expansion. Landscaping, I kind of briefly mentioned that in the screening section, but all of that meets the requirements in the approved plans of the 2012 conditional use permit, which actually during the 2012 requirements were even a little bit more strict than what currently require for conditional use permits and for buildings like this in the zoning district. No changes to buffer yards as well. The one thing I'll note, we do for all conditional uses publish in the Laramie Boomerang We send letters to property owners within 300 feet as well as post the property. At the writing of this, we received no inquiries. Since that time, I've received 2 public comments. One public comment was curious about whether this was going to expand in the most north and most western portion of the site. Once I explained that where the building was going, there was no major concern with that, with the request. The second request was received actually just today and was concerned about the alleyway and that the alleyway not be paved and that it remain gravel so that the local travel, they were participated in the original process. And so they wanted to make sure that we weren't changing that. So I said, kudos to them for actually paying attention. So that was pretty amazing. We explained that that was not changing. And so that was their only concern. You'll see staff has recommended approval of this item. There are some conditions that are basic conditions associated with with most conditional uses. We did include some information about just that the conditional use shall conform to the original requirements of the CUP back in 2012 to make sure that there's no confusion about any of the requirements that were put forth there. And aside from that, really are fairly standard conditions or just recognizing any of the things that we mentioned during our staff report. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions. I believe I know that the applicant's engineer is here, as well as I believe some of the maybe representatives for the church are here as well. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Planning Commission, do you have any questions for Derek? Derek, thank you for that explanation. It was very good and thorough. Any questions for Derek?
Not questions, Jake, but there are some typos in this. Under purpose, that sentence does not make any sense. To amend CUP 12 that allowed for and existing church be recognized and all for an expansion on the approved church. I suspect it was meant to read that allowed for an existing church to be recognized and for an expansion of an approved church or something to that effect. And on the second page, third paragraph, I assume that should be at the last sentence on the third paragraph, all of which are either compliant with code or approved, blah, blah, blah. Do you see it?
Yes,
All
I
of
see it.
You're missing an of. Got it.
Okay.
Third,
Anything else?
yeah, page 3, under B, off-street parking and loading areas, there's a sentence, so staff response, churches and places of worship require 1 parking space per 5 seats plus 1 parking space per 50 square feet of accessory, and I think it's missing the word space.
Okay, noted.
Okay, page 5. Under C, landscaping. So the last sentence of the final paragraph, based on calculation, an adequate number, and it's missing the rest of the information. Whatever you meant there. See it? Okay.
Yep.
And I think that's it. Sorry for being the schoolmaster.
No, that's okay. Derek, just a question on these comments and the process here. This is going to be followed up by a site plan where city staff will review all of these conditions per a typical site plan application process.
Chair, Vice Chair, yes, correct. So yeah, the next step for this applicant would be a site plan application where they would go through that process. Any of the conditions of approval would be looked at that stage as well as like detailed, layout or design for, sidewalks or anything like that. Correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you. And I guess if the applicant would like to approach? And Commission, is there any questions that you want to pose to the applicant? Thank you. Would you please state your name and for the record?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Mark Vaporis. I'm the senior pastor at Snowy Range. We want to thank you for considering our request. Thank you to the planning staff for their help in this, and we look forward to answering any questions that you might have for us.
Okay, thank you. Planning Commission, are there any questions?
I have a question. I think I know what the answer is. Is parking going to be a little bit tight? It looks like if you have a really full attendance, it might be a little bit of a bottleneck trying to get out of there.
Well, of course, if we have a large service, there's a couple of times a year, Easter and Christmas, when we have a larger crowd than normal. But thus far, it seems to have worked out well as we transition through our multiple services on those days.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Donald. Any other questions? Donald, any other?
No.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. I think that's all. I think we can move forward if there are no other comments. Are there any public comments? Derek, can you help me out with that? If there's any comments or any public that would like to make a comment or any opportunity to speak.
It's looking like no one else would like to speak.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I guess I would consider a motion and a second on this.
I'll move to approve a conditional use permit for an amendment to CUP-12-11, allowing for expansion of a church at 2552 15th Street in zoned R2 based on findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Ryan, can we have a roll call on that, please?
Evans is absent. Matamore is absent. Heisler White. O'Toole.
Aye.
Persilic.
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye.
And Moody is absent. That is 4 yeses, 0 no, and 3 absent.
Okay, motion is passes. Good luck on your project.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to, or let's see, that was the end of that. The next one is, I guess, long-range planning projects. Derek, there's nothing to discuss about that, I assume.
Correct. Yeah, no long range plot projects, just the variance item that is on your agenda.
Okay, excellent. So we need to adjourn as Planning Commission and reconvene as Board of Adjustment. Can I have a motion for that?
Motion to adjourn as Planning Commission.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ryan, is that good enough? Do we need to reconvene as Board of Adjustment in that motion?
Yeah, probably. So
Sylvia, you want to amend that a little bit? You're muted.
Sorry, say that again.
There you go.
Motion to reconvene as the Board of Adjustment.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. By a voice vote, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion's been moved, and we now are sitting as Board of Adjustment. Philip, it looks like you are at the table there, so take it away for us, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. We'll need to swear in any witnesses at this point for the variance. I know the applicant here is here. I don't know if anyone else is wishing to speak on this item, but if they are, they need to be sworn in by you, Chair.
Okay. Is that at this point or after you give us a rundown on this project?
That would be at this point on the onset. Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any witnesses who are going to do this? Do we need to have them come up to the chair to accept their statement?
In the past, we've just asked you, we've asked them essentially if they're going to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And then they from the audience say they will, or they won't.
Okay. So do we have can we have complete faith and confidence in your testimony that it'll be true and true statements of fact?
I will.
The applicant has said yes. He's the only one that's that is going to share, apparently.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Philip. I'm sorry to make this so painful from a remote attendance, but please continue.
That's all right. I'm going to make it even more painful, right? Because since there's only 4 members of the Board of Adjustment here, just so that you all know, any vote in the affirmative has to be a majority of the whole body. So that would be 4 out of 7. So
Okay, noted. Thank you for that.
okay. So this evening we're discussing a variance request for 108 and 110 Grand Avenue. The variance request is from table 1512-3, the dimensional requirements for non-residential districts. This property finds itself in the DC zoning district. That's the downtown commercial zoning district. And the setback requirements in this district are 0 feet for front and side, and then 3 feet for rear, which is what the applicant is asking for variance from. The Coal Creek Coffee Shop and Tap House are currently housed at these 2 addresses, but they are currently located on 1 lot. The applicant is wishing to do a minor land division on this property in order to separate the 2 businesses. But in order for a minor land division to occur, both lots need to be in conformance, which they aren't currently, because there are 0 setbacks for front, side, and rear. The downtown area was platted long ago, before setbacks, I think. So it is not uncommon for this type of issue to arise, especially in this instance where, a lot split doesn't really result in anything on the outside changing. There's just no way that it can meet the rear setback as it currently sits. So I'll run through this staff report briefly, but that in a nutshell really is it. It's a nonconformity, but there's really there's really no way for it to be conforming because it's built 2 lot lines. So the findings of fact that this body, that staff went through and is encouraging the Board of Adjustment to consider are found in your packet, and I'll just go through them briefly here. So for a variance, the first one is there's special circumstances or conditions fully described, and I just said that. Built to the lot lines, there's very little to be done. Other than I'll be spoiler alert, staff is in recommendation of approving this variance. So that's kind of how the staff report is written. So I'm kind of going to fly through this because I want to get to any questions because it's pretty straightforward from our point of view. So as mentioned, special circumstances or conditions. Yes, a building is currently built on the lot to the lot lines on the front, rear, and side. The second one, the circumstances or conditions are such that the strict application of the provisions of the code would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of such land or building. We're saying that, yes, the strict adherence to the 3-foot setback would preclude the applicant from dividing the property and from essentially having two businesses in the downtown area rather than one. I mean, there's two now, but it's the same owner. Future plans perhaps will split up ownership of those two. So that's what's trying to be taken care of here. So in order to encourage, downtown businesses, we're also in recommendation of that here. Thirdly, if applicable, the circumstances or conditions are such that the strict application of the provisions of the code would deprive the applicant of access or alternative forms of energy such as solar, wind, not applicable in this case. Fourth, the granting of the adjustment is necessary for the reasonable use thereof. An adjustment as granted is the minimum adjustment that will accomplish this purpose. Yes, there's no other, there's not a reduction asked for. It's just an ask of a 0-foot setback, which in this case, if you look at the property, the rear doesn't even abut to a public right of way. So another building could be built right up to that lot line, and it would be, in a sense, the side of that building and the rear of this building, if that makes sense. So it's just the way that this property is laid out. A adjoining property could be built right up against the back of it because it's not even abutting an alleyway, which oftentimes is the reason for a rear setback, but in this case, it's not even applicable. Fifth, the granting of the variance is in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the code, will not be injurious to the neighborhood or otherwise detrimental to public welfare. Again, nothing's going to change on the outside. If you weren't tuning into this meeting this evening, you really wouldn't see any difference down there other than when the business is able to divide ownership and it already has separate entrances. Our building department has already addressed the fact that if there is separate ownership in the future, then the separation will need to meet building code. Currently, we've all been there, right? There's that door that goes between the two businesses. That's going to have to be addressed in the minor land division process. But this has to do strictly with that relief from the rear setback. So the last finding, the variance, and again, as I said, so we don't see it as detrimental to the neighborhood because it's going to be unnoticeable from our standpoint. Lastly, the variance, if granted, will not alter the central character of the neighborhood or district in which the property is located. Same train of thought here. Legal notice was published as required in the newspaper. Letters were sent to surrounding property owners within 300 feet. When we sent you this, there weren't any public comments. We did receive 2 inquiries. That's all they were. They just wanted to know what was going on. And once explained, there was no issue on their part. So our staff recommendation is to approve the requested variance, which would allow the applicant to divide the property through the minor land division process. And Mr. Chair, I will stand for any questions. And the applicant is also here. I'll add again in case he wants to add anything.
Okay, thank you for that, Philip. I do have one question, and I think I know the answer to it, but I want to hear it from you. This is not this request for variance is not a result of something being constructed recently that violates the zoning requirements. It was built quite a long time ago, and now it doesn't meet that setback, the current setbacks. And so in order to do a minor land division, this variance has to be granted for something that has been in effect existing a very long time.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. It is a pre-existing non-conforming use.
Okay, thank you. Planning Commission, are there any other questions from our group for Philip.
Philip, the setback is it all the way around the building or both buildings, or is it just on the east side?
Mr. Chair, through you. So in the DC zoning district, along Grand, that would be considered the front of this building. So that's a 0-foot setback. And on the east and west side, it's 0, which they're built up the lot lines there. And the rear abutting essentially the Bolton parking lot area down there, that is the rear. That's where the 3-foot setback would be required.
Sylvie, were you going to ask a question as well? Nope. Okay. Are there no other questions from Planning Commission? We can have the applicant approach the stand and say any statements they want to say. Philip, thank you for that.
Hello, Chair and folks. I don't have any comments to make. I just came in case there were questions, which I don't know too much about all of this. I'm just trying to jump through my hoops here so that we could separate the building properties. That's all. So
I see. Thank you. Commission, are there any questions for the applicant?
Not from me.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any public comment out there? Philip, are there anybody in the public that I can't quite see, but it looks like it's a pretty slim
No, there
house.
Mr. Chair, there's no public comment.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. With that, I am looking for a motion on this. And again, as Philip had mentioned, that since there's only 4 of us here, that constitutes a quorum. And on this variance, that requires all 4 of us to vote in the affirmative to pass this. So with that being said, I will go back to my original statement of looking for a motion.
So I move to approve the requested variance from Laramie Municipal Code Table 15.12-3, dimensional requirements, non-residential districts, to reduce the required rear setback from 3 feet to 0 feet for the property located on 108 and 110 Grand Avenue, based on findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. And Ryan, can we have a roll call vote on this, please?
Yep. Evans is absent. Matamore is absent. Heisler White. O'Toole.
Aye.
Priscillic.
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye.
And Moody is also absent. That's 4 yeses, 0 nos, and 3 absent.
Okay, this variance request has been voted on and approved. All right, applicants, good luck with that. And I guess we're at number 9 for adjournment. We have a motion to adjourn as the Board of Adjustment, and I guess adjourn the meeting.
I move that we adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I second.
And can we have a voice vote on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Are there any opposed? I don't think so. So thank you, folks. We appreciate your time, and I'm sorry I kind of forgot about this, but made it happen via wonderful technology. So we will see you next week. Is that right? We have a special meeting next week?
Yep, correct.
Okay.
Planning Commission, we have a special meeting next week, 1 item. So you should have got your email already. I hope.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. We'll see y'all next week. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you.